All right, hi guys. So today we are looking at 15-3, which is all about analyzing and comparing quadrilaterals. Remember, when we're comparing things, we're looking at two things and seeing how they're alike or how they're different. And especially when we're comparing quadrilaterals, we're looking at one shape and we're kind of comparing its attributes and deciding which of the different quadrilaterals it can fit into. Remember, there's two major groups. There's parallelograms and trapezoids, and they are both quadrilaterals because they both have four sides and four angles. But a parallelogram is called a parallelogram because it has two sets of parallel lines, whereas trapezoids only has one set of parallel lines. And then within parallelograms, there are three different types of parallelograms. There's rectangles, rhombus, and squares. And I have my cheat sheet here from last week. I hope you have yours. You can always go back and print off another one if you need one. And I'm going to be using this as I'm going through today. And you can also remember to use it on your quick checks as well. So I crossed off a couple of the questions here because it was talking about the previous page, and I felt like we had those similar kind of questions here. And so let's look first at number 2 in our guided practice, which says, can you have a square trapezoid? So look at your cheat sheet and look at what a trapezoid has, and then look at your square. And let's see, can you ever have a square trapezoid? So if a trapezoid only has one pair of parallel sides that will never ever cross, a square is a type of parallelogram, so that should give you a hint. And a square has to have 4 right angles and all the sides the same length. Well, if you are only having one set of parallel sides, then you're not going to have 4 right angles. It's impossible. I also can't have a square that is a trapezoid because a square is a parallelogram, and these are kind of like opposites. They are not going to be able to be the same thing. The only thing that a trapezoid and a parallelogram have in common is that they are a quadrilateral. Everything else is different about them. So that one is not going to ever work out. So that's something we can write here. We can say no, because a trapezoid is not a parallelogram, and a square is. Okay? Number 4 says, what attributes does a square have? Because it is always a rectangle. So let's look at a square over here. And 4 right angles and all sides the same length. So a square can always be called a rectangle because in order to be called a rectangle, it just needs 4 right angles or square corners, and that's also a rule that a square has, all 4 right angles. So because they both have the same rule, they're always going to be, a square can always be called a rectangle. A rectangle cannot always be called a square because look at this kind of rectangle. It does have 4 right angles, so it can be a rectangle, but they're not always rectangles don't always have the same side lengths. So that's why that one is. But what attributes will a square have because it's always a rectangle? So it's always going to have 4 right angles, and look at the sides. The opposite sides are always going to be the same length too. Okay? So for numbers 5 through 9, you've got different polygons here, and they have different descriptions over here. And so it says list all the polygons shown at the right that fit each description. If there could be no such polygon, tell why. So you're going to read the description and then you're going to write down, I think it's polygon A, E, F, D, whichever one you think, because it's got the label inside. And if you read a description and you're like, well, that doesn't fit any of these polygons here on my paper, then you're going to write that down as well. So go ahead and pause your video and see, what do you think? Okay? So the first question is number 5. Which of the following polygons is not a parallelogram? So I'm going to look at my cheat sheet and I see that a parallelogram needs to have 2 pairs of parallel lines, opposite sides have to be the same length, and opposite angles are the same size. So when I went through and I looked at it, I saw that polygons B, C, and E did not fit the parallelogram description. B, although it looks very close, these 2 sides are not parallel completely. C, these 2 sides and these 2 sides are not parallelograms, or not parallel to each other, so it's not a parallelogram. And then same thing with here, this is a trapezoid, so all B, C, and E are all trapezoids. Number 6 says it is a quadrilateral, but it's not a parallelogram or a trapezoid. So which shape doesn't even have any of their sides, opposite sides are parallel? That one was polygon C. This one is not parallel to this one. If I drew it forever, it would eventually cross like up here. This one is not parallel to the bottom because it would eventually cross over here. So it is a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides, but it's actually a quadrilateral that's not a parallelogram or a trapezoid. So that one's kind of tricky. So number 7 says, is a square but is not a parallelogram. That one is a trick question. It's impossible. There are no such thing as there can be no such polygon because squares are always parallelograms. Look at our cheat sheet right here. A square is always a parallelogram because a square, no matter what, has 2 pairs of opposite sides that are the same length, because that's one of the rules. All sides are the same length. In order to be a parallelogram, it needs opposite. So if all of them are that way, then definitely opposite ones are. And opposite angles are the same length, and it has 2 sets of parallel sides. So that one doesn't make any sense, okay? So none, because a square is always a parallelogram. I love saying that word. All right. Which one of these shapes is a rhombus, but it's not a rectangle? So it is a rhombus, which means all of the sides are the same length, but it doesn't have 4 right angles. That one was polygon A. This one right here. All of these sides are the same length, but these are not perfect square corners like this one is, okay? So number 9 says, is a parallelogram and not a rhombus. So that means that it can be a parallelogram that is a rectangle. So which ones do you think? That one was F and G. Because I can call both of these parallelograms, but they're not a rhombus because all the sides are not the same length. Okay? Nice job. All right, flip over to the back. Ooh, sorry. Okay, so on the back, we're just gonna be doing number 14 because it's kind of like what would be on your quick check. Number 14 says, look at these polygons. So I've got polygons A, B, C, and D. Part A says, name one attribute or like one feature or one character trait that all 4 polygons have. So what is something that they all have in common? So remember, I always look at angles, I look at sides. What do you think? Well, one thing that they definitely all have in common is that they are all part of the quadrilateral family. They're not all trapezoids because this one and this one's not a trapezoid, or maybe this one and this one are not trapezoids. This one and this one are trapezoids. These are parallelograms, but they all can go into the quadrilateral family because they all have 4 sides. All are quadrilaterals. Have 4 sides. Okay? So part B says name an attribute that both A and D have, but B and C do not. So what do A and D have and B and C do not have? So look at them carefully. I kind of started talking about it a little bit. Okay? So both A and D have two pairs of sides that are the same length. So like this one's the same length as this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one. Both A and D are both parallelograms. Both B and C are not. So both A and D have two sets of parallel sides. We could write that. Both A and D are parallelograms with opposite equal sides. Okay? All right, nice job, friends. That was 15-3.